So one current issue with our timer is that currently it's only capable of counting from 0 to infinity. There's no option to reset the timer or to pause the timer and then start it again after a little while. And you would expect a basic timer extension to have these features. So let's implement those features inside of the pop-up itself. We won't make it an option inside of the options page, since these are pretty common functions that you would expect to be able to do inside of the pop-up itself. So to do that, let's open up our pop-up HTML and our JavaScript. We can close our options page stuff. And what we'll do is begin by looking at our pop-up, and we're going to add in 3 buttons. The first button will be the start timer button, and I'm going to give it an ID of start. We're going to create a stop button, give it an ID of stop, and then we'll have a reset timer button, an ID of reset. So inside of our popup.js, well, first of all, we can open our pop-up and we can see that our buttons are now here. But what we'll do is we'll need to get references to all 3 buttons. So we'll do document.getElementById. And I'm going to copy this 2 more times. We'll have our stop button. Our reset button. And then now that we have our 3 buttons, we need to add a event listener. And this will be a click listener. And inside of the callback, what we're going to do is we're going to set a flag. And we're going to set this flag inside of local storage since it's being controlled in the pop-up and it's not exactly in options that we really need to sync between browsers. So we're going to use chrome.storage.local. And then we're going to set an isRunning variable to false. Or, sorry, I mean to true, since we're starting the timer. And then I'm going to copy this a second time. And for our stop button, all we're going to do is set the isRunning variable to false. And then I'm going to copy it one last time for our reset button. And when you click on the reset button, it should set isRunning to false so that it pauses the timer. And then what it should also do as well is set the timer variable itself back to 0, since we're resetting the timer. So now that our buttons are working with event listeners, we actually have to use this isRunning variable inside of our background script. And since we already fetched from local storage, all we have to add is this isRunning key. And then again, we'll have to set a default value for isRunning. So if res.isRunning exists, then we'll set it to that. But if it happens to be null, then we'll set it by default to be true, so that the timer is running by default. And if not is running, so if running is false, all we'll do is return early from our callback, so that none of this timer incrementing or notification code happens. And if we now refresh our extension and we hit stop timer, you can see that our timer no longer counts. And then if we hit start timer, it starts counting again. And then if we hit reset timer, it sets the timer back to 0 and pauses it. And then we can hit start again to start the timer. So now we have basic start, stop, and reset functionality working on our timer.